Never use slaughter as a means for propitiating a divine source. Not at all necessary. Absolutely uncalled for. Very sinful. Let us be very clear. Srimad Bhagavata makes it very, very clear. It is the latest scriptural composition that we have before us. Bhagavata makes it very, very clear. In the case of Shunasheva, he was able to cry and show his resentment. The animals and birds, alas, have no such sense. They won't be able to cry and show their resentment. So what is the thought and the reaction of the animal that you are going to sacrifice? Exactly like Shunasheva. If they had a mouth to speak, a tongue to speak, an intelligence to understand and react to, they would have expressed themselves in the same manner as Shunasheva did. And what happened? Varuna came and no sacrifice is necessary. This is the same principle that you have to adopt. People who are indulging in animal sacrifice or bird sacrifice, it is high time that they realize that no such sacrifice is called for, permitted or expected. In the name of God and divinity, you are doing something heinously sinful. Heinously sinful. Irretrievably you are going to be sinful. Avoid it. This story is in the Aitareya Brahmana. This is so far as animal or bird sacrifice as a part of the divine yagas and yajnas, sacrifices and ceremonies we are performing. So let us be very clear. The householders are the one source from where children are getting born. Our society is getting shaped and born. So all the purity that we are seeking and searching for should be dawning in the household minds and the household activities. Now, here are 3 points mentioned. Yat grana bhaksho vihidasuraya. Generally, I don't know whether I have told you already, there are some sacrifices, Sautramani, etc., where liquor is used. And after using the liquor, Bhagavata says you should only smell. Otherwise, the rule and the prescription is that take a very small drop of it like your ajamana and then drink it. That is what is said. So far as animal food is concerned, take a small piece of flesh like the size of a black gram, cover it with butter and swallow it without touching even the throat. This is what they say. So whenever you want to perform and whenever you want to eat flesh, this is the ceremony you have to perform. So naturally it is regulated and controlled. Similarly, evam vyavayah prajaya naritya. The conjugal life is definitely a part of human life. But what is meant by conjugal life? 24 hours a family lives together. The men folk will have to go out and toil for themselves. The women folk look after the family. Children are born, they are looked after. Whenever a child is born, it is just like God getting born. A child is said to be God. And to look after the child, it will take time. Though the children are born by virtue of conjugal life, understand that the conjugality should not be extended beyond a measure. It can never be for sport or extra indulgence. Our Shastras clearly say, Srimad Bhagavata itself says, the householders are supposed to observe all these. What? Brahmacharyam tapasyaujam santosho bhuta sauhridam grihastasya pradau gantu sarvesham madhubasanam. Brahmacharyam tapasyaujam santosho bhuta sauhridam. For the householders, what are the disciplines? What are the restraints? What are the nishtas that are enjoined? Brahmacharyam. I think all of you should be stunned by my statement. The householders are the one to practice brahmacharya. I have told you perhaps earlier also, the unmarried people, by their very fact of not having married, they are already celibates, brahmacharis. An unmarried man is not supposed to have any sexual interactions with anybody because he is not married. Now, it is allowed only for the married people. But is it allowed indiscreetly? Certainly not. There is a rule and there is a prescription. What is that rule? Brahmacharyam tapasyaujam santosho bhuta sauhridam. Grihastasya pradau ganduhu sarvesham madhupasanam. For the grihastasya api ritau ganduhu. A married person is supposed to visit his wife when she has had her menstrual bath. At that time, he is not supposed to be away from the woman. He has to come and be with her. Now, that is the time conjugality is permitted, and perhaps nature also needs it. There is a persuasion for it. Now, a householder who has conjugal dealings with the wife, say a few days, it is said to be something like a week or so, after her menstrual bath, that person is considered to be a brahmachari. For the householder, being in the company of wife for conjugal purposes is permitted, but only subject to this proviso. For 1 week, perhaps in a month or 28 days. For the rest of the days, he is supposed to be a brahmachari. Now, this brahmacharya is primarily meant for householders. The other people are already brahmacharis. They don't have to have a practice or a discipline. So, this is something very important. Sarvesham madhupasanam. For all people, worship of God is necessary. What are the other disciplines? Tapaha, shaujam, santosho, bhuta sauhridam. Austerity should become part of your life. Tapaha means austerity. What is austerity? Always trying to be eliminating the undesirable parts of your life and incorporating the desirable parts. We have exercises like fasting half a day, fasting a full day, undertaking a pilgrimage, reading either Ramayana or Bhagavad Gita, etc. All these come under austerity. Shaucha means cleanliness. You have to keep your house clean, articles clean, mind also clean. Bhuta sauhridam. Have an overriding compassion towards all the creatures. Sarvesham madhupasanam. And taking the liberty for conjugal exercise only during this period. This is something very important. And sarvesham madhupasanam. For all people, wholesome worship of God. This is also an important aspect. So there are so many items here. It is not brahmacharya alone. See, there was a poet by name Bhartrhari. He became an ascetic. And after becoming an ascetic, spending his time lonely in the forest in a hermitage, he started contemplating upon and sharpening his intelligence and improving his wisdom. He has written 300 verses, a century of verses on each subject. The first is called Niti Shatakam, the second is called Sringara Shatakam, and the third is called Vairagya Shatakam. All the three are very, very good, they say. Niti Shatakam I have read. Vairagya Shatakam also becomes part of our culture. But Sringara Shataka, dealing with romance, people like us, we are not interested in it. So the Niti Shatakam are very, very beautiful Niti Shatakam verses. Similarly, Vairagya Shatakam also. And during the course of this telecast, I have recited verses from Niti Shataka and also Vairagya Shataka. Maybe I will do it again also. Srimad Bhagavata particularly is a scripture, a composition primarily meant for benefiting, enriching and enlightening the householder community. This is something that none of you should forget. You should not miss this point. All our Shastras for that matter are meant for the largest community called householders. All sannyasins also have their birth in homes. If they have imbibed a spiritual culture or a refinement, it has always been from the householder parents. So your life is something very precious, valuable. The society of a land or the nation as a whole is shaped by the householders. Because every child is born in the home or maybe in a nursing home. A single child is born from a couple. Every child is born like that. And the child is imbibing not from all the community. It imbibes from its own parents. So the parents are going to determine the quality of every citizen, as you understand now. So I think all of you will have to re-evaluate your position and make sure that the life that you are leading at home as well as outside is conforming to the standards of goodness, promotion, elevation and enlightenment. There cannot be any laxity or negligence in this matter. This is the standard that I will set for all of you. What is that standard? Every one of you must have a home which is either a Vaikuntha or a Kailasa. If it is a Vaikuntha, the mistress of the house should be a Mahalakshmi and the master should become a Mahavishnu or a Narayana. Suppose it is a Kailasa, then the woman will have to become a Parvati and man will have to become a Paramashiva. Now we have so many songs and so many Puranas and other literature, very sublime and very divine, explaining the marital life of Vishnu and Lakshmi and also Shiva and Parvati. So the marital life is not something like a taboo. None of you should look at it that way. But the married people will have to make sure that the marital life is something very sublime, noble and benevolent. Corruption should not be allowed to creep in there. This is something very important. So conjugal life is quite okay. But 24 hours of the day, you are not going to be conjugal in every matter. After all, it's a home. Children will be born. Everyone will have to be busy looking after his own or her own pursuit or profession. So where is the time? So very important point is that. That is why Sri Krishna clearly says, Grihastasya pridau gantuhu sarvesham madhupasanam. In every little thing or big thing that you do, the touch of God or divinity will have to be brought about. Sarvesham madhupasanam. He says, without keeping God in front, God in the middle and God also in the end, you should not be doing any action whatsoever. So let us keep this. The whole life has to be divinized, spiritualized. Everything will have to be glorified and there is a way of leading such a life. That is the real household life. As he first mentioned earlier, what? Loke vyavayami shamadya seva nityastu jantoho nahi tatra chodana vyavastidisteshu vivaha yajna suragrahai asu nivrittirishta. There are three important tendencies, very strong, prevalent in everyone. No special motivation or instigation is necessary to make them prominent. They are very strong. They are instilled by, woven by Mother Nature herself. There is no doubt about it. What are they? Vyavayami shamadya seva. Vyavaya means that partnership, conjugal life, conjugal indulgence. Amisha madhya seva, the craving for eating flesh. Madhya seva, for drinking liquor. Now these three are very prevalent. Let us not debate about it. There are some people who are prone to it. Now, understanding that they are prone to it, our scriptures, like a universal mother, they are trying to handle these three and tame these three, spiritualize and divinize them for the sake of the people. And this process is achieved by setting up the institution called marriage. Marriage is actually a choice institution that we have made. I think mating is there for animals, birds, reptiles and everything. Whatever is in the form of a creature or a life form, they have got their own methods of mating and they are governed by seasons. In the case of human beings, they don't have any seasons as such. But the life is different. And though it is different, the chance for everything is more. So you will find, as long as youthfulness lasts, the question of mating also arises. But we have to look at it with a sublimity, with a divinity, and with an overall benign feeling, a wholesome purpose we should administer to it. And that is called the marriage institution. Our marriages are celebrated with a lot of mantras and tantras. What do you mean by that? The true marriage is done Agni Sakshika, in the presence of fire. Just like the fire remains pure and burning all kinds of things, combustible things thrown into it. In a family, in a house I should say, there are so many developments possible. Many events may come to pass. Many episodes may come to pass. Some may be good, some may be bad. bringing up children is not at all a small job. It's a very complex job. If you have good children and harmonious children, well and good, everybody will compliment you. Suppose there is a disharmony between the couple, or between the parents and the children, or between the children themselves, what would be the calamity? Actually, the Kuru dynasty declined and fell only because of the differences between Duryodhana on the one side and Yudhishthira on the other. And it brought the entire country into division, bringing about 45 lakhs of warriors, and 11 by 18 of which sided Duryodhana, and only 7 by 18 sided Yudhishthira. Can you imagine? Actually, Mahabharata describes how much conflicting a family life can be. Bhishma, the great-grandfather, with all his magnificence, both in archery and also spiritual wisdom, he was not able to bring sense into Duryodhana. While Yudhishthira was growing with the sense and splendor of dharma, Duryodhana was proving more and more wicked at every time, and the grandfather has to bear it. Finally, what did he do? He stood on the side of Duryodhana at the time of the war. This is something that all of you cannot easily understand and assimilate. Bhishma's mind was so great, so honorable, so impenetrable, that it did not matter to him whether he stood with Duryodhana or not, but he was blessing Yudhishthira for victory. Can you imagine the most conflicting nature of a family life? So in all these matters, what will help you is the right vision, a sublime, a wholesome attitude. Do not leave your heart, do not lose anything whatsoever, do not lose your heart, be stable. There is a ray of hope everywhere. By spiritualizing everything, divinizing everything, I think we will be able to cross this wonderful worldly ocean. So, marriage is an institution, and this institution is an open license for a grown-up, an adult man and an adult woman to get into a relationship in the form of a family, and they can live. What is the purpose of living? As I mentioned earlier, Vamsha Vruddhi. We are all born. Before we shed our bodies, let us give birth to 2 children who will take our place. This is our purpose. So the birth and growth of children should be in our mind. Conjugality is only to the extent that it is necessary. So it is very clearly mentioned here, Evam Vyavayah Prajaya Naritya. Conjugality is a special indulgence or a pursuit by which you can have the birth of children. That is the purpose. Never use it in an improper manner. Imam Vishuddham na viduswadharma. Actually, the household dharma is something very pure, holy, sublime and adorable. But by wrong understanding, by delusion and by wrong indulgences, the whole purity of the householder life is being tampered with. This is what we have to avoid. I am reminded of Bhartrhari, the great poet about whom I said. He has composed 3 centuries of verses, as I said. The Vairagya Shataka of Bhartrhari, it is actually a home poetry for an ashram poetry everywhere. All the ascetics and sannyasins read these verses. They receive a lot of inspiration. It's a wonderful poetic composition which at every point generates a lot of dispassion, the strength of dispassion, the beauty of dispassion, the glory of dispassion, the splendor of dispassion in the minds of the seekers. Such a person. This is what is said about Bhartrhari. Circumstances connived themselves in such a manner that he had to promise his father that he would not have a child, but he was married. Now, how did he fulfill this promise? Those were days where no contraceptives were there, and such indulgences or permissiveness was not thought of also. Even now, many people do not think of it as well. So, Bhartrhari had to fulfill his promise. What he said is that he had his wife and he had very good relationship also, but he made sure that he used to meet his wife only after 16 days after her bath, menstrual bath. That is the monthly period. Now, conforming to this discipline, he completely avoided the birth of any children at all. Now, in the case of Bhishma, we find a totally different picture. For the sake of his father, he undertook a vow of lifelong celibacy. I would not marry. Here, Bhartrhari was married and still he avoided it. Now, how could he avoid it? Because nature makes a provision for the pregnancy period is something, not very many, maybe a week or so. That is what medical people say. I think that restriction is sufficient for man to lead his celibacy. That is why celibacy should grace the householders. Don't think that celibacy is for sannyasis. They are celibates all right. And till married, all brahmacharis also are celibates. If celibacy is a discipline, it's a vow, it's an austerity, it is an embellishment for the human mind and human personality, it is only for householders. Evam vyavaya prajayanaritya. I think this one particular line, all of you should understand very well. Let us not take the indulgence as a sport, as an unrestricted sport or otherwise. Let us be very clear. The right word to be used is, one has to be abstemious, not abstain from totally. Abstemiousness is quite alright. Shankaracharya has written a poem called Shadashloki. And one particular verse comes to my mind. You know, this Vedantic thought is so penetrating, so rational. They will ransack everywhere to find out what is the best example to drive home the supreme truth. So here is a verse. Just like Vedavyasa has discussed the subject of conjugality, romance, permissiveness in the matter of Vyavaya, etc., I am also speaking. Understand that the young ascetic, 16-year-old ascetic, he is speaking about all these things to Parikshit. So like Vyasadeva, like Shugamuni, this Swamiji also is speaking to you. And like Parikshit, you should faithfully listen to me with a lot of attention. Indrendraanyoh prakamam surata sukhajushoho syad retamdas sushuptihi tasyam anandasandram padamati gahanam yatsa anandakoshaha tasminno veda kinjit niradishaya sukhabhyantare liyamano dukhi syad bodhidassan idi kushalamatihi bodhaye naiva suptam. You know that we have three important mental states or inner states. They are called states of consciousness. Consciousness is the root substance, which manifests itself in the form of three states or avasthas. This is generally called avasthatraya. Have you ever thought about it? Why do we have these three? Many of you must be dreaming. All of you should necessarily be sleeping every day, and we are wakeful. Now, wakeful ceases, we go to sleep. Sleep also ceases, we drift into dream. From dream, we again come back to wakefulness. This kind of a cyclic process goes on. But have you ever thought about it? You are only busy and concerned about wakefulness and what all things it produces and brings. But what about the other two parallel states, which question the waking state itself? They question. Both of them question the waking state. In the waking state, you feel all the objects are very gross, physical. The mountain is very big, the sea is very vast, the space is endless. Everything is gross before you. But actually, is the grossness there? When you woke up, that wakefulness itself, is it something gross or is it something very subtle? It belongs to your consciousness. Wakefulness is a condition or an avastha produced by the awareness or consciousness. The presence that animates your body brings forth the wakefulness. And in the wakefulness, when the mind employs the senses and looks at the world, then only you find grossness. Wakefulness itself is not gross. When the whole wakeful world rests upon your internal consciousness, which is very subtle, can you call it gross? It's a creation of the subtle. And what about sleep? The entire wakefulness is completely wiped off and you go to sleep. Now, where is the world gone then? And in the dream, what is the mind doing? It produces in its own manner, within its own range and arena, all the objects that you see otherwise in the wakeful world. So the mind is capable of producing all these things. So the world has been produced by your mind or by some external factor. All these thoughts should pervade your mind. all.